Thank you, Chair, and thanks to NIB for inviting QCI NABCB to this very, very important event. I have a short presentation, and if my colleagues in the IT cell can quickly run through it. Coming to the next slide, please. I'll be presenting how the national accreditation system is helping the entire ecosystem, whether it's the government, regulators, industry, or any other stakeholders. So if you look at the international trade scenario, we have the trade organizations or those bodies which are governed by the international trade agreements like a TBT agreement or SPS agreement, which is WTO. And we have the national regulators here in CDSCO and other regulators within the country. And for any product, process, or service, we have standards, international standards like ISO, IEC, ITU, Codex, lots of other international bodies. And then we have the national standards body, which lays down the standards. And we have the national accreditation system, which is linked to the global system and the international bodies like ILAC or IF. And this is how any product or process needs a conformity assessment and the traceability of measurements, the metrology, which is NPL in India, or for radiation standards, BARC, and then BIPM at the international level. Next, please. So if you look at the entire ecosystem for quality, we have the standards bodies, we have the conformity assessment bodies like certification bodies, inspection bodies, testing laboratories, calibration laboratories. And to have the confidence in the conformity assessment, we have the accreditation system in place. Next. If you look at the Indian ecosystem, as I already mentioned, is the national standards body. QCI is established by the government as the national accreditation body. NPL is there, and we have the Department of Legal Metrology for the legal metrology aspect. Next. I'll skip this just to tell you that we were established in 1997. We are an independent autonomous body under the Department of Commerce and Industry. And the mandate was to establish the accreditation systems within the country and help the Indian industry establish quality when it comes to both the domestic and international markets. Next. So this is how we are structured. We have 4 accreditation boards. NABCB is one. NABL, everyone knows about it. NABH, everyone knows about it. NABIT is another board, and we'll talk about how this accreditation system functions in the country. And we have other divisions within QCI. Next. Yeah. So what is accreditation? It's an international system for having confidence between the economies on the conformity assessment results. And accreditation is a third-party attestation. So anybody who doesn't have any interest, user, supplier, buyer interest, so that gives a assessment of that body that it's competent to perform that conformity assessment, whether it's a test, inspection, or certification. Next. So when you talk of conformity assessment, when you talk of testing, inspection, certification, so there are, as you all know, first party, second party, third party, but as the risk increases, and definitely in biological, the risk is very, very high. So the third party conformity assessment is the most preferred route globally. Next. And if you look at the international trade agreements, I was referring to the technical barriers to trade, the TBT agreement of WTO or SPS agreement or the UNEC recommendation. Everyone talks about the word accreditation. That means when you are verifying compliance of a product or a process to a standard or a regulation or any industry spec, it needs to be done through accredited bodies, and that's where the confidence is coming around the world on accreditation system. Next. So we at NABCB, it's I think lot of schemes, and that is why you can't see it. 5 broad areas that we give accreditation to. One is management system certification, whether it is 9001, which is very, very simple quality management systems, 22,000 food safety, or maybe 13485, which is medical devices quality management system. So we give accreditation to these certification bodies which are providing these certifications. Then we have the product process certification bodies. We have the bodies which are certifying the skills and competence of persons. So we call it personal certification. We have the inspection bodies, and we have the validation verification bodies. And all these are as per the international standards. And when I talk of validation verification, of course, everything is important for this sector. So when a new product or a new process and you want to validate against the limitations, against the assumptions, against the methods, so validation verification bodies. And verification is against claims. So if a product or a organization is making some claims, so it can be done through the accredited verification bodies. It's a new standard which has come, 17/29, which came in 2019, and it's applicable to all industry sectors, including biologicals. Next. NABL, you all know about it. So they are the another constituent board under QCI, and congratulations again to NIB for getting that Professor S.K. Joshi Award. First award you got it this year. And they gave accreditation to the testing, calibration, medical laboratories, PT providers, reference material producers. And reference materials is one of the key elements. You were talking about the controls. Proficiency testing is another one. Not only accreditation, but these two are other areas which are of quite relevance to the biological sectors. Next. So this is how the system exists, and both NABCB and NABL form part of the international system. And ultimately, it is to provide confidence, trust, assurance to all stakeholders, which is the government, regulators, consumers, purchasers. And every level there is an assessment happening. We face international peer evaluations, and then we evaluate the competence of these accredited bodies. Next. So I have my stopwatch running here, so I can see that. So this is how we are internationally recognized. We are recognized. There are two international bodies: International Accreditation Forum, that's for the certification validation part, and ILAC is for the testing, calibration, medical inspection part. And these two international bodies are also destined to merge. Decision already been taken, and by 2024 this will become one single international organization. And there are different regional bodies. So we fall, India comes under Asia Pacific region. So we are members of APAC. We are not only members, but signatories to the multilateral recognition arrangement. So we get internationally peer evaluated every 4 years. So does NABL. And once we are successful in our evaluations, any accredited reports or certificates issued under our accreditation will have an international equivalence and acceptance. Next. So this whole concept is about 7-8 decades back, just emerged after the Second World War. And now the whole objective is anything which is tested, inspected, or certified once should be accepted everywhere. Now we are all talking of technical barriers. Nobody talks about tariff barriers. And that is why this is all more important. And when you look at G2G agreements in the morning inaugural session, the Secretary Health was also mentioning about having bilateral agreements. So this will help the NIB or any other institution or any other government body to have bilateral or multilateral agreements. Every G2G agreement, whether it's a bilateral or multilateral agreement, these days have the components on standards, conformity assessment, and accreditation. And since NIB is a premier institute, I would suggest that not only we should adopt international standards, but we should take a lead in development of the international standards also. Next. So this is how it is structured. There are 5 recognized regions, regional bodies: AFREC for Africa, EA for Europe, APAC for Asia Pacific, IAC for both North and South Americas, and then we have AREC for the Gulf countries. And these are all internationally peer evaluated, and then we are evaluated, and then we evaluate the competence of these conformity assessment bodies. This is how the whole chain works. Next. If you look at this map, all blue ones are the countries which are signatories to the MRAs. And if you look at Europe, America, Asia, only part is Africa and West Asia that you can see. Next. So now how does this MRAs at accreditation level helps? It helps, as I mentioned, if the government or the regulator wants to have G2G agreements, conformity assessment is very, very important. And this becomes the basis of accepting each other's conformity assessment results, accredited conformity assessment results. And that's where the national accreditation system has an important role to play. Next. We are recognized by many international certification scheme owners in diverse fields, ranging from food to environment to aviation to other areas like forests also. Next. Within the country, we are recognized by almost all government ministries, departments, regulators. In fact, CDSU and their medical devices regulation prescribe NABCB accreditation as a prerequisite for the notified bodies. Food Authority in their food safety auditing regulation prescribes that. CPCB prescribes that. PNGRB for oil and gas sector, they have an MOU with us. They rely on our accredited bodies. Bureau of Energy Efficiency. So all those regulators, they rely on us. Industry heavily relies on the accredited bodies. Next. So these are some of the benefits, main technical competence and international equivalence and acceptance. I would suggest that you go to the two sites given at the bottom, publicsectorassurance.org and business-benefits.org. Globally, you can see how countries have benefited, sectors have benefited around the globe on using accreditation. Next, I skipped 30 seconds. So last slide, how does this sector? Management systems, you can use it for the manufacturers, processors, suppliers, vendors, anyone. If you are sourcing your products from your vendors, then product process certification of your vendors through our accredited bodies. Inspection, if any consignment, public procurement consignments, or maybe any inspections of facilities that accredited inspection bodies would do. Validation verification, I've already mentioned about testing of products. Any product needs to be tested, accredited laboratories. Even reference producers or PT providers, medical testing once a human is sample, I mean say human being is subjected to a particular biological drug or a medicine, then if his sample needs to be tested during clinical trials, that can also be done. And most important, certification of persons. We have lots of people working in it and at different levels. If the certification and of their competence skills is required, it is done through our NABCB accredited personal certification bodies, all as per international standards. Thank you. I think